It's been decades since the last manned moon landing, Apollo 17, which happened in December 1972. Isn't it time we thought about going back to our dusty satellite, and maybe even staying there? NASA has made a promise on this subject. They're preparing to send astronauts on the moon again, perhaps by 2025. This will all happen through a program called Artemis. It's also going to include the first woman ever to experience the lunar surface. Now you might ask, why haven't we done this already? One former NASA administrator said something interesting on the subject. It's not because of scientific or technological issues. Problem was that the potential projects took too long and were just too costly. You see, space travel, especially when it involves humans, isn't easy on the pockets. It's true that, in recent years, NASA had budgets of billions of dollars. Sure sounds like enough money, right? Well, not when you check out their to-do list. That's because they have to consider everything, from telescopes and giant rocket projects to missions also targeting the Sun, Jupiter, Mars, and beyond. When you look at it this way, NASA needs to be very good at budgeting to achieve all those goals. It's not just because of finances, though. The moon itself is quite problematic. It poses real dangers that cannot be taken lightly. For starters, its surface is filled with craters and boulders that aren't easy to land on. Then, there is the moon dust, or regolith, if you'd like to call it by its scientific name. It was created over many years by meteorite impacts. It's extremely harsh and sticks to everything. It can potentially damage spacesuits, vehicles, and systems quite quickly. Also, dealing with the lunar habitat isn't a walk in the park either. The moon has no protective atmosphere. What this means is that for 14 days at a time, the lunar surface is faced with harsh rays from the sun. That period is followed by another 2 weeks of total darkness. All these changes create extreme temperatures, which us humans are not really accustomed to. There are solutions, don't worry. NASA is working on dust and sun-resistant spacesuits and vehicles. They're even developing a system that might supply electricity during those lunar nights. What's even more interesting about this system is it could come in handy on Mars too, once we get there. NASA also needs to draw in really smart people for its projects. Think about it. The average age of the people working for the mission control for Apollo 13 was just 26 years old. And these people had already been part of numerous missions by that time, which means they'd had considerable experience from a very young age. But here's where other individuals can help too. In recent years, it wasn't just NASA who's been working tirelessly to revolutionize space travel. There are many successful people out there with enough resources to join in on these efforts. Some are developing new types of rockets that can land on the moon too. In total, NASA landed 12 people on our satellite. It's definitely one of the most awesome moments in its history, if not the best. And those astronauts did amazing things up there. They brought back rocks, took snapshots, did science experiments, and even left flags behind. These were all important moments of the Apollo missions, but they weren't meant to create a safe place for humans on the moon. Scientists have had this idea of a lunar space station for a long time now. It's only logical. After all, it's just a 3-day trip from Earth. It means we can, technically, afford to make little mistakes here and there, without messing up the whole project. Plus, we'd learn so much before venturing even further into space. A moon base could provide fuel for deep space missions. We could also build telescopes up there, and launch them way easier in space. It could also help us in another important project. Figure out how to make Mars habitable too. Not to mention, a lunar space station would help us learn more about the moon's origin. Who knows, it could even bring in some money because of all that fun, exciting lunar tourism. Either way, the Apollo moon program took a lot of work. For starters, let's look at the sheer number of people involved. Around 400,000, from every corner of the states. Not everything was picture-perfect, tough. There were two main unfortunate events. Firstly, a fire mishap at the launch pad of Apollo 1. Secondly, an oxygen tank decided to throw a tantrum on Apollo 13, causing severe issues mid-mission. An important part of the project was Saturn V. It is to this day the most powerful rocket flown successfully, being 36 stories high. Still finding it hard to picture? This rocket stood twice as tall as Niagara Falls. Thanks to Saturn V, NASA successfully completed 13 missions. This included chauffeuring 24 astronauts towards the moon, with half of them even having a little walk on its surface. The existing rockets and space shuttles can't go beyond low Earth orbit. In simpler terms, they can't reach the moon with all the gadgets astronauts need to thrive. Current space vehicles are just not capable of carrying that load, at least not since the Apollo missions happened. Regardless, we did make a lot of progress on Earth and are ready to send astronauts to our satellite pretty soon. Here's where the Artemis project comes in. It's a program overseen by NASA. And to make sure it all goes well, NASA previously launched Orion, a spacecraft with no crew on board to orbit the moon and return to Earth. Think of it as an automated test drive. Before we actually send people out there again, we need to make sure all the devices work properly. One day, Orion will be the vehicle that will take astronauts to the moon again. It features a launch abort system to keep astronauts safe in case something bad happens during launch. It also has a service module, which is the powerhouse that fuels and propels Orion and keeps astronauts alive with water, oxygen, power, and temperature control. All these future projects make one wonder, what will life on the moon be like anyway? We can only use our imagination for now. Some say we'll be living in homes straight out of a fairy tale, something like a cozy hobbit hole. Living underground on the moon might be a must. That's due to the scorching temperatures and the lack of oxygen. If you add meteorite threats and the non-stop radiation, it's no wonder we can't just walk on its surface. What about transportation? Big and small companies alike are trying to create the ideal moon ride. If current estimations are current, one type of moon taxi will take off as soon as 2024. Unlike our current rockets, these space taxis won't have to deal with the harsh conditions of re-entering Earth's atmosphere. It will be easier for them to make multiple round trips. To support our lunar living, we'll need to have a special area for space taxis to safely take off and land. Think of it as a landing pad on a firm, flat stretch of moon surface, protected by walls to shield against moon dust. Moving around on the moon's surface will be made easier too. The next generation vehicles we're talking about will have their own controlled environment, which means you won't need a spacesuit while inside. Should feel like stepping out of your space ride for a bit. Then of course, you'll need to put on your spacesuit. All right. So we've got our homes and our rides sorted. But what about fuel? That's where the moon throws us a lifeline. The moon's lighter gravity means we don't need as much power to escape its pull. Plus, the moon has ice, and that's super handy. We might be able to convert this ice into rocket fuel. We'll need dedicated space gadgets to help gather this ice. One such tool is called Trident. It's like a drill, perfect for digging into the icy moon surface. Additional robotic helpers would then turn this ice into fuel and deliver it to a space gas station. If this works, rockets on their way to Mars could stop by for a quick fuel top-up before continuing their journey.
It seems you've been lost in the dark, cold vastness of space for ages. You don't remember what green trees look like. You can recall what fresh morning air smells like. You're about to run out of what little fuel you still have. And then, you see it! A planet! Can it be Earth? Your battered spaceship is moving closer to the planet, and a giant wave of bitter disappointment almost drowns you. This alien world looks nothing like your beautiful blue planet. You get down to work. After thorough research, you realize that the planet in front of your eyes can't be anything else but Kepler-22b, which, in turn, means that you're 635 light-years away from home and are unlikely to ever return to Earth. You need some time to get used to this horrible revelation. When you come back to your senses, you understand that you have to do everything in your power to survive, even if it means living in an unfamiliar, probably hostile world. The only good news in that ocean of desperation is that Kepler-22b is located in the habitable zone of its star, and it means there might be liquid water on its surface. And where there's water, there's also the possibility of life. Your life. Earth's astronomers discovered this exoplanet, which is what all the planets outside the solar system are called, using the transit method. The problem with many exoplanets is that it's hard to spot them since the bright glare of their stars keeps them hidden from our telescopes. But the transit method means that instead of looking for planets, scientists watch the star, Kepler-22. They noticed that over time, its brightness changed. That was because Kepler-22b regularly blocked the star's light. This discovery also helped researchers figure out the size of the planet and the way it orbited its star. It turned out that the planet was 36 times more massive than our planet. If you decide to settle down in this world, this information will probably make you feel even lonelier. Your new home is also 15% nearer to its star than our planet is to the sun. If Earth moved over so close to our star, everything and everyone on the planet would become fried in no time. Consider yourself lucky that the star that is now illuminating your spaceship, lying sideways on the surface of the planet, is smaller and colder than the sun. It means you'll get as much sunlight as you would if you were on Earth. The temperature on your new home planet is quite comfortable, around 60 to 72 degrees F. But don't get your hopes up. You don't know for sure yet, but there's a theory that the planet is rotating on its side, like Uranus in our solar system. What can it mean for you? Unfortunately, nothing good. Even though the position of the planet probably seems insignificant, the complications might be fatal. The problem is that in this case, the north and south poles of Kepler-22b would be either plunged into darkness or illuminated by super bright sunlight for half a year. Now, that wouldn't be a matter of being a daytime or nighttime person. It would mean that temperatures on the planet would change from freezing to boiling all the time, which wouldn't be great for your survival. Anyway, you haven't had enough time to figure out whether this prediction is true. What you have noticed, though, is that your new home is covered with an ocean. You almost dropped into it before resuming control over your spacecraft and landing it on the shore instead. According to your calculations, the ocean might be around 160 feet deep. It might also act as natural climate control, keeping the wild temperatures at bay by storing heat in the summer and releasing it during the winter. But even if it's true, your main concern is food and oxygen. You're running out of your scarce resources at an alarming speed. What are you going to eat on this lifeless planet? How will you get some air to breathe? Your future looks darker and darker with every passing minute. Will the sheer strength of your willpower help you survive? Time will tell. Have you ever asked yourself, what is consciousness? If so, I've got some good news for you. Scientists seem to have begun unraveling this mystery that has been puzzling humanity for ages. Consciousness is literally everything you experience. The tune playing in your head for days on end, the bitterness of your morning coffee, the annoying pain of a headache, and the love you feel for your parents. But the origin and nature of these emotions and experiences, also known as qualia, they have been a mystery since people first started dwelling on this question. Some scientists believe that qualia don't exist or can never be studied by science. In other words, it means that we don't have feelings or sensations at all. They all exist just in our mind. But most scholars accept consciousness as a given. They try to figure out its relationship to the objective world described by science by setting philosophical discussion aside and looking for the physical footprints of consciousness. Like, what is that highly excitable piece of brain matter that gives rise to consciousness? What we're looking for is the neuronal correlates of consciousness, aka NCC. For example, what processes must start in your brain for you to feel a headache? Do some special consciousness neurons need to be activated? If so, where are they located? Some experts argue that consciousness might arise from a particular type of information processing. In this case, consciousness emerges when incoming sensory information is broadcast globally to multiple cognitive systems of the body. They then process these data to speak, store, or call up a memory or perform an action. But since our storage space is quite limited, we can only perceive a small amount of information at any given moment. The network of neurons broadcasting these messages is thought to be located in the frontal and parietal lobes of the brain. Once the data are globally available, the information becomes conscious. The person is now aware of it. Modern machines haven't got to this level yet, but some experts believe that it's just a matter of time and computers of the future will be conscious. Another theory about consciousness is called integrated information theory. Its main idea is that each experience has certain properties and exists only for the subject as its owner. It's also structured and specific, like a frame in a movie. That's why an experience can't be separated into parts. Otherwise, it'll cease to be what it is. Now I've got a question for you. Have you noticed the dots that kept appearing throughout the video? If so, can you say what color they were? Okay, another question. Are you sure that other viewers saw the same color? Yes? Then let me tell you a story about the games our mind can play. There is a hypothetical concept known as the inverted spectrum. This concept refers to the philosophy of color, and its main idea is that two people might share the same color vocabulary, but their perception of the colors they see will be totally different. In other words, it's when someone experiences red objects like you experience green ones. Let's imagine how it could be if we applied this idea to our reality. Let's say you've been operated by a surgeon who accidentally messed up some connections between neurons in your visual system. These changes have led to an unexpected result. Those neurons that used to fire while seeing red objects now react to green objects, and vice versa. No wonder that after awakening from the operation, you find the world to be a very strange place. Your lawn, trees, and plants in your garden look red or purplish. The flamingo statues are now lime green, and the hue of cherry blossom resembles the color of the sea. These changes in your experiences are bound to get reflected in your behavior, mainly in your verbal reports. There will definitely be some straightforward evidence that an inversion has happened. Or let's say you underwent the same operation at birth, and you learn to apply color vocabulary to things with anomalous looks. But to you, these looks are not anomalous. So you use color vocabulary in exactly the same circumstances as all other people, but you see the world differently. Imagine traveling 10,000 years into the future. What would our planet look like? Would there be giant volcanoes? Would most of its surface be covered with oceans? And what if we traveled even farther, 1 billion years in the future? Now, Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, and when it formed, it looked very different from now. It was an extremely hot world, drowning in molten magma. Then, over the course of a few 100 million years, the planet began to cool. That's when the oceans filled with liquid water appeared on its surface. Heavy elements, initially floating on the surface of this bizarre Earth, started sinking past the oceans and magma toward the center of the planet. Earth became layered. The outermost layer was a solid covering made out of relatively light material, while the denser substances sank to the center of the planet. That's how it all began. Now, speaking about such a distant future, and 1 billion years is no joke, the chances that humans will still be around are very slim. You see, there are quite a lot of threats the human race might face in the process of its development. Climate change, overpopulation, falling asteroids and comets, ice ages, the sun getting hotter. Let's say you've got your hands on a time machine, and on your way to see what our planet will look like in 1 billion of years, you make a few stops. And the first one is 10,000 years into the future. One of the main changes is the appearance of people. Apparently, genetic differences are no longer regional. Such traits as skin tone or hair and eye color are evenly distributed around the globe. 20,000 into the future, and you don't understand people anymore. None of the current languages is recognizable, and the language people speak only has 1% of the present-day vocabulary. Moving further, 50,000 years into the future, and you realize with horror that a new ice age has started. Niagara Falls have eroded, and a day on Earth has increased by 1 second. Your next stop is 250,000 years from now. The landscape of the planet has changed a bit. For example, a new island has formed in Hawaii. After exiting your time machine 500,000 years into the future, you realize you might have made a mistake. Fires are raging all over the planet and the air is nearly unbreathable. The reason is a giant asteroid. People didn't manage to prevent it from hitting Earth. You hop into your time machine and set the timer to 1 million years from now. It seems you're out of luck. This time, it's a massive supervolcano eruption, spewing out hundreds of cubic miles of ash. It's already produced enough lava to fill 75% of the Grand Canyon. 2 million years into the future, and people have created settlements all over the solar system. Humans look different on different planets and moons since their bodies have adapted to particular conditions existing in those regions. 50 million years into the future, and you see that Earth is still changing. A massive part of Eastern Africa has broken off, forming a new ocean basin. Africa has crashed into Eurasia and closed off the Mediterranean Sea. A new mountain range, higher than Mount Everest, has formed between these two landmasses. Also, Mars has collided with its moon and got a cool ring system, just like Saturn. You make a stop 600 million years into the future and find out that a gamma-ray burst has occurred around 6,500 light-years away from Earth. Luckily, it hasn't hit our planet. Otherwise, there would no longer be the protective ozone layer and it would have caused a mass extinction. Also, the moon is now so far from Earth that there are no more total solar eclipses. And now, your final destination, Earth 1 billion years from now. With bated breath, you leave your time machine and freeze in shock. Our once beautiful planet has turned into a lifeless desert. The levels of carbon dioxide have dropped dramatically, and there's no photosynthesis anymore. It means that free oxygen and ozone have disappeared from the atmosphere, and there's no more complex life on the planet. Plus, the sun's luminosity has increased by 10%, making average temperatures on Earth rise at least twice. You feel as if you're standing in a giant damp greenhouse. The oceans have evaporated, leaving a few small pockets of water at the poles. What about people? You won't find them on Earth. By now, they have already colonized some faraway planets in faraway galaxies. You should probably leave this inhospitable world too.